Thanks, Perry. And hello again. And for this panel, I'm really intimidated in that basically two of my favorite presenters, Colorado Water Forums, James and Bob, are always very insightful, but always just very funny as well. So I'm very honored to be up here. At least right now, at the table with James, I don't quite know what Bob's doing. Yeah, as Perry mentioned, I manage a program that looks for, it's called the Alternative Water Transfer Grant Program, and we refer to it sometimes as the ATM program, and that it's probably a very bad acronym for that. Yeah, but we do give out money in that program, but so maybe that's appropriate. It's been an area that I've thoroughly enjoyed working on, this subject. In Colorado, as we talked about earlier, about how we really have water supply shortages. We have sectors of that use water, so there's the agriculture community, definitely waters, using 85% of the water in Colorado. M&I, municipal and industrial, extremely important as far as for a healthy economy and a good lifestyle for Coloradans. The non-consumptive uses, the environment and recreational uses throughout Colorado, and even especially on the west slope and in the high country, where so many people are not only citizens but for tourism and in and out of state comers to go and recreate in Colorado, and so all these uses are so important, and I alluded, we have these statewide conversations with the IBCC and our board about statewide conversations on maybe new supply. Are we going to develop any more Colorado River water or not for the state of Colorado? Now, I'm not going to really go there, but we are at a point where we really don't have a system where there's abundant supplies. We may have some new water from the west, and that would be very, very helpful to be able to help the state grow and thrive. But right now, that there's no new transbasin diversion plan, and so right now, water providers they're looking out into the future and their needs, and so one of the areas is irrigated ag, where there is a real supply of water, and they can go to water court and change that water use to municipal and industrial purposes and put it into their system, and they can grow into that. And we talked a little bit about conservation and reuse, and those are viable strategies. Different states, and what are some common elements of state water planning, and it's really to really look at current and future needs of our water resources, quantify our water supplies, to evaluate supply and demand management strategies. I think that's a really key point. So it's not just an analysis, it's actually looking for solutions to water supply shortages and increasing demands, to seek solutions not just for one particular sector, but for a whole variety. If you think of all the water needs in Colorado, it's not just the municipal growth, but there's agricultural and environmental and recreational uses for water as well. So again, some key drivers for our update for Swazi as we go forward. We're going to be looking at quantifying the municipal and other demands, identifying critical water supply shortages, developing and improving our technical tools that we rely on and use for modeling and so forth, implementing or facilitating solutions to our water shortages, looking at our non-consumptive environmental and recreational needs, and developing better understanding of the need for new or possible revisions to state water policy. So you might have heard our governor's talked about a state water plan, and this was something he mentioned a couple years at Colorado Water Congress conference, and then just recently in the State of the State address, and so we're working at basically bringing in the state water plan, which will be the umbrella document, which Swazi will be the technical foundation for which the state water plan will be able to rely upon. Also, as I'll get into this a little bit further, our state, we have 9 basin roundtables under this interbasin compact committee process, and these 9 basin roundtables are really looking at their own basins, their needs and their supplies, and the CWCB is really promoting and advocating this development of basin plans, and that is really a foundation not only for Swazi but also of the state water plan. And so we also have not only the CWCB, which is the state water policy agency, but there's also entity, it's the Interbasin Compact Committee, which is basically a 27-member committee that is that consists of state water leaders that discuss broad statewide water policies or issues, and that committee will also be instrumental in feeding into the state water plan. So it's really a grassroots process. Swazi is the technical foundation with the board and the governor and the IVCC and the roundtables feeding into this into the state water plan as just this product. And so that will be basically, our target is 2015, and so that we're really kind of gearing up for that. The roundtables are gearing up for their work in this, and so it's we're excited, but we're also there's really no time to spare as we get moving on this. So some of the elements of the Swazi update, as I mentioned, the basin implementation plans, get into that just a little bit more. M&I demands, municipal and industrial demands. We're going to look at agriculture, water demands, non-consumptive needs, water supply availability. Also, if you're familiar with Swazi of the past, we've done a gap analysis that focuses on the M&I gap, and so we do have a shortfall with all the projects that are out there by the water providers. There's still a very significant water supply gap, and that needs to be addressed. And so that's what really the roundtables and IVCC and the CWCB have been focused on, and trying to figure out the best mix of solutions to be able to meet those needs. So some of the other things we're going to be looking at, which we haven't looked at in the past with Swazi, are climate change, see how that affects not only supply but the demands as well, and energy water needs. That really hasn't been a real focus, especially on the Front Range. Some of the fracking water demands at that time when we were developing the latest SWASI in 2010 was just really kind of coming up, and now it's much more of a water demand. It may not be a huge amount of water in the entirety as far as statewide, but in certain locations it can definitely be something significant. And also with scenario planning and adaptive management. Now Aaron's going to talk about the Bureau's study, which also has scenario planning and components to it. What the IBCC has been working on for the last year or so has been this scenario planning, which is basically with the possibility of climate change and all the uncertainty as far as our future goes. It's becoming more and more obvious that we really can't look at the past to necessarily show us where we're going to be in the future. And so scenario planning is basically a way where we can have different scenarios or different futures and still plan for those in light of the uncertainty. So I'll touch on that, and so that'll also be a component of our update to SWASI. Also, a very important aspect of this update will be to really track where we're going as a state, to track M&I demands and see where, if the providers are, how they're doing as far as the level of conservation and such. And so there's actually a few years ago House Bill 1051, which requires reporting from some of the larger providers. We'll be bringing in that information to be able to help track our M&I demands, and that'll help us recalculate the water supply gap. Continue to track the different projects that the providers have identified, or the IPMPs. Look at non-consumptive projects. A lot of the funding that we've had through our agency, through the Water Supply Reserve Account Grant Program and other funding sources, we've funded various non-consumptive and consumptive projects, and really see how those are going to meet the gap. Look at drought planning and also, I'll get into this actually a little bit later on the next panel on these alternative ag transfer programs and how are we sustaining our agriculture in Colorado. So I want to just talk a little bit about the basin planning work and what we are really encouraging the basins to do for this update to SWASI. And in 2005, the Water for 21st Century Act, which set up the roundtables in the IBCC, basically asked or required that the roundtables do a few things. And these three things are basically to prepare a needs assessment for their consumptive and non-consumptive needs, to assess their water supply availability, and to identify projects and methods to address their consumptive and non-consumptive needs. Now, a lot has been done since 2005 on these particular areas. And actually, Gary Barber's here. He's the chair of the Arkansas Roundtable, and I really do commend the Arkansas Roundtable for doing really just an excellent job at being very targeted as far as the tasks go in 1177, and I credit Gary to really leading the roundtable in that effort. What we're doing with this basin implementation plans is within this same vein, but we're just getting a little bit more detailed in the analysis, looking at, and I'll just kind of describe some of the elements that we're hoping that some of these that will be in the basin plans. And it's exciting because I really think that while there's definitely some opportunities on statewide, and there's big issues of statewide importance, that there can be a whole lot of really good work that can be done on the basin level and in-basin solutions as well. So here are some elements of what could be in a basin plan. Really just have the round table and have the constituents identify what are important goals of the various, their particular basin. So is, sustaining agriculture a very top priority, having a good supply of water and reliable water source for your economy, for M&I, etc. And it's really to take a real hard look at what's been done. There has been a lot of work. I mentioned the WSRA program. There's been a lot of studies and projects, but studies in particular that can be brought together and synthesized and really help with this basin planning effort. We don't want just these words, be it if it's aquifer storage and recovery or whatever it is. We don't want those studies to be just sitting on a shelf. We want to be able to bring those so that the basins can really utilize that to be able to optimize the water in their basin. So update their consumptive needs and projects, evaluate the basin needs and opportunities, and really look at in-basin solutions as well as inter-basin solutions. So I think it's exciting, but there really is a lot of work that needs to be done in a fairly short time frame. So I talked about the scenario planning and data management. Over the last year or so, the IBCC has been working on really sorting through these various scenarios, identifying. This is just a real quick graphic that shows really Swazi is going to be completed in the approximately 2015. That can basically serve as kind of a point in time where you are, and then as we move forward, as you look at this graphic here, there's different signposts or triggers, and so every time we have new demands that are, let's say for the M&I, are we tracking as far as, are the demands starting to go down? Are they going up? Or is climate change occurring? Are the temperatures going up? Are the agriculture demands going up? So it's really kind of these signposts or triggers allow us to figure out where we are, which scenario we're starting to track towards, and then there's different solutions and different tracks that you can plan for. And so, for instance, in this on the left hand of this table here is really how is implementation of our what we call no regrets. A little bit of this is a little esoteric here, but how are we doing on our projects? How are water demands tracking? And so if water demands are tracking lower than expected, you go in one route or so. So we're going to incorporate that into our state water planning effort. And with that, I'm just going to leave it, and I guess we're going to hold questions for afterwards, or?
Well, if you have any now, that would be fine.
Okay.
I have a question. I have a question for you folks, having heard that. And please let's thank Todd for that. It was kind of a lot of information fairly quickly, and hopefully the idea is that over the next 2 days we'll be teasing out more of the details out of that and putting all of this information into context.
And so this effort is really looking at trying to account for those, trying to make sure that they know there's a market for those. It's available water, and so basically to be able to capture and can kind of control those and look for some kind of institution. They're calling it a co-op, and I think that may be the actual kind of institution that they're looking at, and to be able to market that. And so really, again, this whole program, and there's the various projects that are funded may be somewhat different in nature, but I think the common thread is that it's trying to, I guess, optimize the use of this scarce resource and trying to maximize the benefits for Colorado. And so it's not really where it's going towards trying to find these strategies that maybe share it with different interests, and it's not just held by a municipality in a reservoir at all times. Maybe it's that cornfield is basically a reservoir. And so anyway, this Lower South Platte Co-op, they're really looking at trying to optimize those available water down there, and maybe even maybe there's a time when that water is even able to be transferred to the Denver metro area. They're looking at a market really up and down from Denver down to the state line. Colorado corn growers received a grant basically exploring different ways to share water. One of the thoughts was to be able to basically take a ditch system, carve out maybe, let's just say 10% of the water in a particular ditch system, and through an agreement of some sort, have that water go to a participating municipality. So they would get, one of the concerns of municipalities would be, I don't have a firm supply of water. And so this 10% would be just that. And then the remaining part of that ditch may be some kind of interruptible agreement system where on a particular 3 out of 10 or whatever type of agreement is arranged, that water is shared on that kind of basis. And so that's being explored. Some of these, that particular grant, they came up with some template, worked with some water engineers and attorneys that are practitioners in especially the South Platte on and looked at terms and conditions that really might fly, because it's these again are kind of out of the box, and to be able to have some a template, terms and conditions that would ensure no injury, which is a big issue, and we're this whole effort is really trying to work within our current system. It's trying to respect the right for a farmer or city, but a farmer to sell or city to buy. It's really more of an incentive-based program, looking at trying to push this topic, make it again an option for those people who are wanting to do something a little bit different. So I talked about some barriers to implementing these alternative transfers, and so potential high transaction cost is one. And so over the course of 5 years, so we've been through some of these studies and projects, as well as just talking with other stakeholders, and I've held some kind of task force to really get into the weeds on some of the issues. But one of the issues with something that may be more temporary in nature, we're basically comparing these alternative transfers to the alternative, which is buy and dry. And high transaction costs, I mean, is municipalities say, why would we spend the same amount of resources to be able to, for engineering and for the water court transaction, And why would we spend the same amount for something that's only temporary rather than go through the water court process? We have it in perpetuity, it's in our portfolio. And so are there ways to try to lower the transaction cost? Are there ways to get more streamlined approval for these temporary transfers so that it's really, some people, I think it was with that flex market, was termed kind of the King Soopers approach, where municipality can just go to, I think it was Lisa Darling who was with Aurora, was saying, you know, I just want to be able to, when I go to the grocery store, I want to go pick my milk and go to the cash register and get out of there. I don't want to have to deal with the cow and milk it and go through the whole process or whatever. And so is there a way to be able to create a market within Colorado so that if a municipality is looking for water supply, basically go to King Soopers, get that water and put it in their system and they're done with it. Colorado Big Thompson is a great example of a very functioning water market where water can be traded very easily. It's a fungible commodity without it having to go through such a lengthy and costly process as some of the transfers that are being attempted in Colorado. So, water rights administration issues. Some of the methods that I talked about are not necessarily completely fouling of the land. It may be where the one example actually was CSU and the city of Parker, where they teamed up for an experimental farm, they still do, in Iliff, which is lower South Platte area, and basically looking at applying less than the full irrigation requirements for crops and seeing if there are yield and determining what yields there are from those deficit irrigated crops. And there was maybe, it depended on the various applications, but maybe 20 or 30% of yield could be, of water could be had with not the proportional decrease in actual crop yields. But there are management issues. If a farmer were to do that, those crops might be stressed a little bit more than they would be. Well, they are, and so pest and disease might be an issue, and even just the actual management of the farmer, ensuring that that kind of water that amount of water is being delivered. But administration issues would definitely be an issue with that kind of deficit irrigation practice if it were to occur. Because the water commissioner can't just go out to the field and say, oh yeah, that crop is definitely 80% of its normal irrigation. He or she wouldn't be able to easily determine that, and so we're looking at different ways to verify if a particular, verify the amount of water that is being that would be applied. And so we've been funding through that one grant that I talked about. CSU professor, I believe Luis Garcia, was doing the remote sensing and looking at being able to use satellite imagery to be able to look at ET rates. We funded some other efforts on kind of more on-farm type of water budget, where they look at soil moisture, return flows, temperature, and another question is, should it be more production-based? Can we be growing more with the same amount of water? You know, there's technological advances in different in genetics and also chemicals, and so there's that. Or can we even have higher production with less water? So should we be moving to different higher value crops? Colorado is very much on a livestock, cattle and type of industry, and so many of the value-added processes are on that and are based on supporting that sector, and to move to some kind of higher value crop. There's definitely some implications to try to make those shifts, and I don't think it's as easily, it's I think easier said than done, and our climate I think is an extremely important factor in that regard too. So, and should our analysis examine other values provided by ag water use, and so I'll let Dr. Pritchard talk about that a little bit more, but that's really about all I have on